what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. As always, joined by the Senator Phil Perry. Hey, Phil.
Tom, look at us.
Yeah.
Look at us.
For folks who are listening, you're not seeing the new podcast studio. So in this instance, I might even encourage some of our subscribers to jump on to YouTube and check out the new podcast studio right here in Needham, Massachusetts, at the Boston Media Center facility, because people put a lot of time into this. They're taking it seriously. This is a different thing. The Skull Crusher had a field day today, and he's not here. I actually have a camera that just popped me up. So we have an audience of technicians behind us who are going to go, these guys actually, that's their entire thing.
We've got a plant in between us, which I love. You also have a fantastic picture behind you, which I was asking you about earlier. I don't know who number 30 is for the New England Patriots from that era. Not sure who that would be, but yeah, right there.
I think it's Mark Van Eegen. Mark Van Eegen, former fullback for the Oakland Raiders, and then he came here and was a fullback in the latter portion of his career. Tremendous player. Went to Colgate University, and his daughter, I believe, is a cheerleader, and I believe that she is Mrs. Dan Copen. If that is incorrect, strike this.
Call us, Copen.
Strike this.
Get on the
from
podcast.
The
We could use you on the podcast, Copen.
We got a lot to get to today. It was Patriots' first minicamp. You guys are listening for that, not to say, whoa, great studio. Who cares if you're out there? Patriots had their first minicamp of 3. They're going to be off tomorrow. They're going to be back at it Wednesday. We're going to talk about more Drake Maye improvement. We're also going to be talking about pinpointing the progress. How can we tell if they're good or not? We don't have prior years of Bill Belichick or Josh McDaniels or Tom Brady offenses to say, wow, they usually look a little worse or better than this in June. So we're going to try and pin that down. But before we do, we would be remiss if we didn't talk 2 topics prior, and it's the NBA Finals. Phil and I spend a lot of time texting back and forth during the Finals. I watch every friggin' game. I love the Celtics, always have. Go back to the Kevin Gamble, Ricky Davis days when I loved them and I was watching them every night. I go back to the Charlie Scott. Charlie Scott was my first favorite player. Phil, anyway.
Sound like a huge Celtics fan. Yikes.
Give me
Come on.
Give me two series takeaways now the Celtics are up to.
So I'm surprised. Number one, I thought the Celtics would win the series in 7 games. I thought it'd be a really close series. I am moving off of that spot through 2 games.
Good idea.
I didn't want to overreact to game number 1. I said, well, Kyrie will play better. Luka won't finish every game with 1 assist. The Celtics won't go absolutely bananas in the first quarter. Kristaps Porzingis isn't going to be a point-a-minute guy the way he was in Game 1. I thought there was going to be a lot of regression to the mean in a good way for Dallas and in a bad way for Boston after Game 1. Now, after 2 games, I am just fairly confident in 2 things. Number 1, the Celtics can get into the lane with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum specifically whenever they want. Mm-hmm. And Dallas has no answer. I don't know how they defend the Celtics because they can't keep themselves in front of the basketball.
To me, that was what was interesting, and that's one takeaway I had as I looked at the Indiana series. I said, it's not going to look like that, guys. Reason it's not going to look like that is Indiana doesn't care about defense, but with Dallas, you're going to get into the lane, and Jaylen Brown's not going to have free runs because he's going to have Gafford, and he's going to have Derek Lively waiting to swat his stuff. And there has been more resistance in the Indiana series, but still not enough, and that's the one thing that Tatum has done. We're going to talk a little Tatum on my takes, but he's been brilliant with the kickouts. This has been the kickout series to end all kickout series on both sides. They are just blindly from the rim. You drive in and heave it back over your head, and somebody's out there to take a 3.
Well, those big guys can be there waiting at the rim for Tatum or Brown, but because Luka Doncic or whoever is defending either one of those guys can't stay in front of them, they just simply kick it out. They have all this shooting, and even when they go cold,
they catch them in rotation.
They went absolutely cold in Game 2, and this is why I'm moving off of my 7-game prediction, is because how many things did the Celtics do poorly in Game 2, and the Mavs still couldn't win? That was the game the Mavs needed to steal. When Tatum doesn't shoot well, when they all go cold from 3 at the same time, that's the kind of game the Celtics usually lose, and they didn't. So I'm not sure what the formula is for Dallas. On the offensive end for Dallas, what I have found interesting, again, this is my second takeaway, they're just defending Luka pretty much straight up. Mm-hmm. Early in Game 2, it looked like he might score 55 points. He couldn't miss from the field. And so they did start to send a second body at Luka, and he started to generate open shots for his teammates, but his teammates can't score. His teammates are non-threats at this point. Kyrie's at the top of the list. And so maybe they suddenly get hot and all of it, all of a sudden that is the difference between games 1 and 2 and the rest of the series, and it does become a competitive series. But until those other players start to make their shots, if the Celtics are forced to double Luka again because they don't want him to go for 60 suddenly, and those guys get hot, then I could see it maybe becoming a series. But right now, it feels like a stretch to say that.
This is my number one takeaway right now for the Celtics and what they're doing. Whoever hatched the idea to defend them this way was a genius. Somebody came into the series and said, you know what, I just watched 7 games of them dunking all over the heads of who the Mavs play? Oklahoma City.
And Oklahoma City, too. Yeah.
Dunking on the heads, because what would happen is Kyrie or Luka would get it shoulders ahead, put their ass on somebody's hip, keep that guy on their hip, and then because they're in the lane, the help would come over and Luka would throw a lob. That's why he would have 9, 10, 11 assists. Well, he's not able to get his body past, for instance, Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. They're walling him off, so he has to shoot turnarounds. He's not getting them on their hip. He's not creating that interior mismatch to create the lobs. So Lively is useless. Gafford is useless. And I thought both of those guys were going to be a problem because that's how Luka and Kyrie played. So they've taken that completely away, and that's why you're looking at a team that looks like, why are they in the finals? Because the Celtics won't let them play the way they want to play.
And it's a pretty simple defensive game plan. I mean, they're just playing all of these guys straight up. They're playing Luka one-on-one with Peyton Pritchard at times. Like, they don't care. They're just defending him one-on-one. It's as soon as you send a second body to get Luka, that's when he becomes this unbelievable distributor. And I know he had 11 assists, I think, in game 2. But he just hasn't been as effective as making everyone else on his team's life a little bit easier offensively, right? The looks are just not as open for the most part, and he himself has to take a lot of difficult shots because the Celtics are so talented and so deep. They could throw so many people at him to play one-on-one defense, and it's made his life really hard.
You know when his injury showed up? When he was at the line. His shot was
at the free throw line.
Flat.
Yeah.
It's like his arms couldn't go up, which was why I was surprised he kept taking the fallaways, because it requires a little bit of energy to do that. The other thing I wanted to point out is I did not love the game from Jason Tatum. I did for about 35 minutes, and then in the last 8 minutes, it felt to me like he's like, you know what, we got this one. Let me get myself right offensively a little bit. And there were a lot of no-pass possessions that he was the author of, and he did not get himself out of it by any stretch. So thank God for Derek White's 2 threes and the chase down block, because that ended up being a 5-point game, and they needed to get bailed out on Tatum. We talked before the series on Early Edition. Can the Celtics win if Tatum is not their best player? I said absolutely. Pretty easily, because they have lines of players that they can run at you. They have depth, and that's why I felt that Kyrie and Luka were the 2 most important players in the series in terms of their performance. If they can't play, you're done.
I think there might come a point where, in Tatum, he had, 12 assists in game 2? I think he had 16. He said himself at his press conference after the game that he had 16 potential assists. I wonder if at some point they don't just challenge Tatum to finish himself at the rim, because he's having a hard time even doing that.
Can I say this? Do you notice he's putting too much spin?
It doesn't look like spin. It does look like the Dr. J, very long. It's an elongated motion.
He had 3 misses
under.
on the curl around foolishness that he was doing. Just like it was a presentation of the basketball at the rim.
Well, he is so long. I think that's just his anatomy. Yeah. So I don't know how much of that he can actually help. But I wonder if Dallas just says, well, instead of collapsing on the guy, we're giving up all these open threes. He's getting all these assists. Let's just force him to finish at the rim.
Yeah, he's 64% at the rim right now.
So,
which ain't great.
You might be willing to live with that. It's sort of what the Celtics have done with Luka. It's, let's just stay out. We'll take away their corner threes. We'll take away their lobs. If he wants to, on 2 pointers, if he wants to score 45 or 50, we could actually probably survive that. The Mavs might be better off if they said the same thing about Tatum.
And by the way, too, Jaylen Brown is ridiculous at the moment. I didn't think he'd get in the look, and I've been a huge 4 years, and my phone is still chock full of Jaylen Brown lowlights because it was a hobby of mine. I said this to my son last night as he was driving down.
What are you doing with all your time now?
He was driving down in a 3-on-1 situation. I said, it's so anticlimactic seeing him in the 3-on-1 because it used to be just a carnival. You could just break out
He did have 6 turnovers in game 2.
There was some chaos. But, I mean, but nothing like it used to be.
No.
I mean, he
It's
could
much
dribble it
different.
with his forehead.
To his credit.
Just 12 months. To his everlasting credit. The crossover in front of Luka, who I know isn't the world's greatest defender, but the crossover in front of him that turned into a dunk in very small space, holy crap. Meanwhile,
Defensively,
NBA,
too, my favorite defensive possession of Game 2, where he is on Kyrie Irving and he forces Kyrie into a travel where he gets I think he got his hands on the ball at one point. He sort of bumped him with his chest. He is so athletic laterally, and he obviously can jump and protect the rim at whatever he is, 6'5", 6'6", whatever. Is he 6'7"? I don't know. I'm going to get that wrong. But he also is just so strong, and that combination of the quickness and his strength, he's not a bad guy to put on Kyrie. If Kyrie ever starts to go off, we know he can do it on Luka, but he could do it on a variety of different ball handlers.
And he was so overrated defensively. We'd hear every time, it's an elite defender. I'm like, he's not. He forgets where he's supposed to be half the time. He helps when he's supposed to, not when he's not supposed to. Why do you think James Harden hit a corner 3 last year? Because for no reason, Jaylen Brown helped in the lane on somebody, and it turned into a 3. Be that as it may, now he had a chase down steal of Luka. He had a pick clean steal of Luka, maybe 2 of them in the first game. Mm-hmm. Tremendous. Enough NBA. You guys are here for the football, and let's get not to the football, but to Tom Brady. There's going to be people there at this event on Wednesday, and you're going to have a blast. You're going to have what I'm hearing is you get your Jay-Z, you get your Kenny Chesney. It's going to be a concert-type event. You are going to have a great time. But for me, I feel kind of like we've done this. We had a goodbye in 2021 with Tampa Bay. By the end of that game, everyone was, again, booing Brady, but you cheered for him at the beginning. Then we had last September, and this one, it feels overdone. The juice is out of the orange. Stop squeezing. This better be the last one.
Oh, it's got to be, right? I mean, when you get those kinds of high-profile guests, whether they're the ones you're mentioning or they're just other Hollywood stars.
Between the roast
200, did we see 200 former Brady teammates that are going to be there? Was that the estimate? That feels like a lot.
I thought I saw 160. No, that's 160 media.
We're going to get Tully Bantacane?
I'm sure he'll be here, yeah.
Okay, good.
But I don't understand between the roast and this, and he's the greatest player of all time. But we haven't had a chance to miss him yet.
I think that's fair. And those other events that you mentioned, they are not the formal send-offs that you had, for instance, when they had Bird Night all those years ago.
Oh, my God, that was great.
I think that's what they're going for on steroids a little bit because it's going to have this whole superstar concert component to it. He's also getting inducted to the Patriots Hall of Fame. That's sort of like the afterthought here. He's going to end up with a red jacket. Does he end up with a statue potentially? I think that's probably in play. Like you're not going to do another one a year from now that's the Tom Brady statue unveiling, are you?
Yeah, if they do.
You might, I guess. But
Armin LaMontagne.
I think you should get everything.
He was the famed sculptor.
I think you should
the bird.
You should get everything in at once on Wednesday. Yeah.
So, but
it's also the timing's just tough because
horrible.
we're so. I mean, we start on a Patriots Talk podcast by talking 10 minutes of Celtics finals basketball.
If this was training camp, even though, I mean, if this was training camp, I'd feel differently. It would feel like football season. This is as far from football season as you could be in June, even though we're at minicamp.
But then you don't get the 6-12
again
24.
It's overplaying
referencing
your hands.
the rings and the number there.
Overplaying the hand. All right, now let's get to the damn football, the current football, the Patriots football that we witnessed at Gillette Stadium today. First things first, we're going to listen to Hunter Henry with some words about Drake Maye, the full immersion in the offense, and where things stand right now.
They're throwing a lot at us, which is good. Just trying to throw as much as they can on you. So when we come back in training camp, we can hit the ground running. I feel like we're doing a good job. Every single day there's something new, and we're trying to have to apply that to the field. There's a lot of work ahead for sure. I don't know if I can give you a grade. We're putting stuff in and running around the field, but we're not really playing football yet. So football time will come. When we put the pads on, we can kind of get physical, establish our run game, establish different things of our offense, and really put all the pieces together.
What's been your impression of Drake?
He's done a great job ever since he stepped in the building. I mean, I think he's only been here a month, and, he works really hard. He's got a great attitude. He's good in the locker room. I feel like he's really listening and taking the coaching and applying it on the field, too. So he's a fun guy to be around.
So as Phil and I were coming off the field and talking about it, I said, I can't tell. I didn't say I don't care. I said, I just said, I can't tell with these practices if they're good, if they're not good. I have nothing to compare it to. So when there's a bunch of completions, as there were today, because they ran a ton of hurry up, 11 on 11 and 7 on 7, 2-minute drills in which there were penalties you had to pick up, meaning penalties as in if you didn't pick up the first down, your drive was over and the next guy came up. So it was a little bit more high stakes. So we saw some full immersion. We saw some activity where they were after it pretty well. Drake Maye had a good day. Jacoby Brissett remains a better option. He looks as good as, if not better than Drake Maye, who had his best day. But how do we pinpoint the progress of this team? It's not like we've ever seen either of these quarterbacks in this offense and how this offense is supposed to look.
I don't know. It does remind me a little bit of 2022 because we knew they were putting in a new type of offense. And they were changing the language. And they were changing what they were emphasizing. And Bill Belichick was openly talking about, well, I don't think it's a great idea to continue to run the Tom Brady offense here with the group that we had. You know, it was a thing. And so it reminds me a little bit of that because we are looking at them and saying, well, how much of this is just going to school? How much are they still just trying to learn it? Because there were stretches where it doesn't look great offensively. I mean, they ran their hurry-up period at the end of practice, and basically nobody scored. I think they came away with, in 6 or 7 quote-unquote hurry-up drives, I think we saw one made field goal. And I don't think anybody got in the end zone. So that's one thing that I do feel like I can take away from this is the defense is still the Patriots defense, which is still pretty damn good. And there's just not a lot of space to operate offensively. I think we all still need a little bit of time to wrap our arms around it. I will say, Tom, one thing I disagree with you slightly on, I thought Drake Maye was the best quarterback on the field today.
I think
he can do some things,
no, I agree
and
with
it's
you.
starting to become clear that Jacoby Brissett just isn't going to be doing. He's going to be more clean, and he understands definitely better what's going on. But if you were to drop in from Mars today and watch, you wouldn't know that Jacoby Brissett knows the offense better than Drake Maye because there were not a lot of moments where it was like, oh, the rookie clearly didn't know what
Glad
to do
you pointed that out because I think the overarching thing that I'm bringing into this conversation is that Jacoby Brissett is better. Not a stronger arm, not a better scrambler, but he's got better command. He's going to be more accurate. He knows where the ball's supposed to go. The whole product and operation is going to look better. But I would have had a hard time saying these throws to Jacoby Brissett were better than Drake Maye's, and it looked better at this point. Not because Brissett was bad. He wasn't particularly good. Probably he'd give himself a B-, C+. But Drake Maye was also a B-, C+, maybe even a B. No picks after.
I thought he was good.
It was his best day.
Maybe I'm too much of an easy grader.
He had a lot of checkdowns.
Yeah, and he had a couple misses, which are Drake Maye misses, which are kind of spray misses. We talked about this with JT O'Sullivan on the Next Pats podcast recently. He said the one thing that he's going to have to do as a pro is improve the quality of his miss, which I found to be an interesting thought. You know, if you miss your intended target by 10 full yards over his head, the likelihood that turns into a pick, as opposed to if you missed him by 2 yards, is going to be something that you're not comfortable living with on a regular basis. So we saw, I would say, maybe two. One I could think of for sure. Another where a receiver had to really reach up and lunge one-handed oversight. I think it was Jalen Reagor, and he barely got his hand on it. So maybe 2 quote-unquote spray misses. But otherwise, Tom, I had him. He was, let's look at the competitive throws. 24 competitive throws. I had him as 18 for 24. And it should have been 19 for 24. One of his best throws of the day was into a tight window on a seam pass that was put right on LaMichael Petway's face mask, and he dropped it. So he just had a handful of throws. The best throw I thought he had was sort of scrambling up into the pocket, on the run, sidearm across his body to Jalen Polk on the sideline that Jacoby Brissett might be able to do, but Drake Maye does with a fluidity that was pretty impressive today.
I'm going to give you these. 11 on 11. Drake Maye, these are the notes. 2 checkdowns to begin with. Very slow snaps he was fielding from Antonio Mafi. The things were coming back soft serve, which actually was screwing up, I think, the timing of the plays because the balls were actually hanging in the air. So Maye would be pulling away, waiting for the ball, cradling it. the receivers would be starting their routes. So it was actually kind of athletic by May to grab that. There's no reason you should be getting balloons sent back to you in the NFL, though. He had a very nice scramble after the 2 checkdowns. He had an airmail throw on his first downfield throw, then a check down, and he had a downfield TD, Phil. And this is an 11-on-11. I think that was to Petway as well.
LaMichael Petway.
Little push off by LaMichael to open himself up.
You were throwing flags from 180 yards away, which I was impressed by because there were officials on the field, and I don't think we saw any yellow on the turf after that particular grab.
Yep.
Moving to his left, though, Drake Maye was.
Older gentleman, I could still see that.
Rolling left, feet unsettled, and a pretty accurate throw where Petway had to make a nice play and high-pointed it, and so you give him credit on that one. But I thought 2 of Maye's best throws of the day were, no surprise, when he's
scooting
on the move, and he is that kind of athlete at that position.
This was the first hurry-up 11-on-11 for Brissett. He hit Hunter Henry on an in-cut. Then he was incomplete to Henry. He dropped from DeMario Douglas on just a bullet pass that probably was a little fast. Marte Mapu on a pass breakup. And then there was looked like a sack. It was complete very late in the red zone to DeMario Douglas for a touchdown. He spiked it, but I think it might have been a sack. Meanwhile, when May came in, he had a screen to Gibson. He threw underneath to Juju. Throwaway, he hit Jalen Reagor on a 4th down conversion. Then downfield incomplete off schedule to Reagor. Might be the one you were talking about. Minimal gain to Petway. He hit Antonio Gibson near the sticks. Hurried incompletion to Booty. Then that ended that drive. In came Bailey Zappi. Phil, how'd it go for Bailey?
You're talking about the red zone period here? I'm trying to follow along with you in your notes. What a machine you are.
Yeah, I know.
Something else. You sounded like Joe Mazzulla at the podium there.
I just quit after that.
So
once Zappi came in,
what I wanted to say, I think you were finishing on the 7-on-7 red zone. 3 reps for Drake Maye, 3 completions, all touchdowns, whatever. They're on like the 10-yard line. So you would expect that. I think that might be the period of practice that his coaches end up being most impressed by. Even though 7-on-7, it is red zone, so there's less space there to operate with if you're a quarterback or if you're a pass catcher. And all 3 throws, I thought, were really on time and on the guy's face or placed in such a way that it was away from the defender really accurately. So
how did
it
that
was
contrast to
Reagor,
last week?
Rager, Jaheim Bell, and Keyshawn Booty.
Yep.
And last week he ended up with 2 picks. It was very crowded in the red. It was all red zone, I believe, that day that we were there last, and it was a struggle for them to get any kind of opening. And so for them to see that a week later, and for it to look as clean and as fluid and as quick as it was, that might be the period of practice where Alex Van Pelt looks at it and says, "Man, I knew he was good. I knew we wanted to use the 3rd overall pick on him, but this is pretty impressive."
And our last podcast was entitled, Should the Patriots, or actually I wrote a story. I went on and on, 1,600-word story. Should the Patriots fast-track Drake Maye if he continues to signal progress? I say no. Don't fast-track him. Leave it alone. It's still Maye. If he continues to have practices as good as or better than Jacoby Brissett, when everything's in and the defense is game planning on a regular basis and they're sending confusing stuff at him, then you at least have the conversation that maybe we should consider upping it. But we're going to go to early edition. I'm sure the conversation will be, should the Patriots at some point think about moving Drake Maye up the depth chart ahead of Jacoby Brissett? Not until it is beyond certain that he is ready for everything.
Yeah, and I would add, I think what will be helpful to the Patriots coaching staff in terms of making a determination on the timing of all this would be, let's see how many more reps he gets against Patriots' top-end defenders. Mm-hmm. Now, he was out there against guys who will be playing NFL football this year, today, but I think it was still mostly the 2s. You saw Marte Mapu out there, but you didn't see Jabril Peppers, that kind of thing. I would love to see at some point them get him real reps against the top defense in a red zone situation or a hurry-up situation. That's when Devin McCourty and others have told us that's when they knew on Mac Jones was Mac Jones is out here dicing up our one defense because Cam Newton was out, or it was against the Giants and he was seeing their top defense because Cam Newton wasn't available. And that's when we looked at him and said, oh, this kid can play for us right this second. Zappi did have a red zone 7-on-7 period where he threw a nice ball to Keyshawn Booty for a touchdown. He had a throwaway where he had to kind of pat. Nobody was open, threw it away. And then he threw one to Jalen Polk in the back of the end zone on a contested ball that I thought was a nice ball by Bailey Zappi. I will give him his flowers on that one. But a really nice day, I thought, from Polk, who had been quiet in previous OTA practices. So important to point that one out.
And Jalen Reagor had a really good day.
He was very active and I thought did a good job. Caught a lot of passes, and especially on a day where we did have a lot of drops. Tyquan Thornton had a drop. Austin Hooper had a drop. Pop Douglas even had a drop. Reagor seemed pretty sure-handed. I think the period for Zappi that you wanted to highlight was the hurry-up period at the end. They were playing these out, Tom.
Well, that's
and for
the
listeners
reason.
at
I'm
home.
not picking on him. You're talking about 7-on-7 red zone. It was like kind of, what you're pointing out. He looked great. It was not as structured as this 11-on-11 2-minute.
The 11-on-11 2-minute, it felt quote unquote live. Obviously, they weren't hitting, but it was, we're going to give you a drive with, I think they had 58 seconds on the clock or something, and they had to go 60 yards and get into scoring position. And so, Brissett, I think, had 5 plays before his drive stalled out. I'm counting up. Drake Maye had 8 plays before his drive stalled out. Bailey Zappi, first play, 58 seconds on the clock, go down the field, try to score, drops back to pass, tries to throw a curl. Kyle Duggar just steps right in front of it, picks it off cleanly, picks it out of the air, and goes the other way for a pick 6. And I thought we would get, okay, Bailey, start it again, second down, pretend that was incomplete. Nope, he was out, and Joe Milton was in. It was the only 11-on-11 hurry-up rep that Bailey Zappi got. So, not what you're looking for
not
there
what
if
you're
you're
looking
him.
for. Not what anyone's looking for. Mr. Zappi, Mrs. Zappi, Bailey Zappi, anybody who likes the Zappies. And there's plenty of you folks out there who like your Zappi. We're not picking on them. But it's palpable, folks, when it's out there. It's a different level of quarterbacking. And you should be happy to know that. Okay?
Drake Maye is clearly the number 2. Like, I think especially given what Gerard Mayo said before practice, which was, don't pay attention necessarily to when guys are going and what the reps are like. And there is no depth chart. He said that many times over the last few weeks. It seems pretty clear. They're trying to get Jacoby Brissett ready to start, and they're trying to get Drake Maye ready, period.
All right.
And the other guys are getting what they get.
So on that note, we're going to get Phil ready to go and do a news hit. He's got a 5 o'clock news hit. By the time you get this, it'll probably be, 8 o'clock, whatever time Casey Keenan and the Skull Crusher are able to turn it around. But I do want to say thank you. For those of you who are watching this on your YouTube machine, thank you very much to the folks who have diligently attempted to get this podcast studio up and running. It has been a long process. I mean, we moved into this joint right as COVID started, and we never got to use the place. Not the podcast studio, but the whole place. So it is in fits and starts gone along, but we are here now, and thank you very much.
A lot of hard work, and we appreciate everybody that has put this together. And we, of course, we appreciate Mr. Van Egan behind Tom. And I've got the beautiful, I didn't realize I got the Zakin Bridge right behind me.
You know what's funny,
there it
too,
is.
Kevin
in
was
all
saying,
its glory.
Kevin was saying he wants more things back here. Kevin Miller.
I'm sure you've got a few knickknacks we could throw on that little
and
table
folks,
back there.
if you have anything that you'd like us to put here and display during Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, you let us know, okay? Until next time, which will be Wednesday, I think, because we have tomorrow off, and we're going to do one more pod. Brady thing's coming up, everybody.